Well, here I am again. 10 movies, 3. Is it the third one already? Holy Toledo. Number 1, The Twilight Samurai. This is a 2002 movie directed by Yoji Yamada, and starring Hiroyuki Sanada. Hiroyuki. Off to a great start, aren't we? Hiroyuki Sanada. You may recognize this actor. He's terrific. He's had parts in comic book movies from the Wolverine. He plays Shinjin in the Wolverine. He has that awesome fight with Logan halfway through the movie or near the end of it. And then he also has a similar role in Avengers Endgame. He has that awesome fight sequence with Hawkeye or Ronin near the start of that movie. So, really accomplished actor, and by God, this was an amazing movie. Okay, so just to say it up front, these 10 movies that I'm talking about here, I could give them all my highest recommendations. I think these are all phenomenal, fantastic movies that are most definitely worth seeing. It's been a bit, I guess, since I've made a video because I've been so busy just watching movies. After I watch one, I can't get enough, so I stay up till 5 and I watch another and another and another, and it's just this endless cycle of movie consumption. Oh man, if movies were food, trust me, I'd be a fat guy by this point. But the Twilight Princess, I'm thinking of Zelda now or something. The Twilight Samurai from 2002, this was a beautiful, elegant, brilliant samurai movie. Not in your typical sense where you got a lot of samurai action like out of a Kurosawa movie or something like that. Something like Seven Samurai or Ran or what have you. The action in this is very limited. There are about 2 sequences of samurai action throughout, and that's about all you get. The majority of this is a drama, historical romance movie, and it's staggering. This movie is quite something, quite the masterpiece. Had me crying by the end of it, so you know you're in for a good movie when you get emotionally invested in these type of characters, and this was certainly the case. I loved all these characters. I love how there's not really a villain in this movie. It's more so just the way the samurai, if you will. Very beautiful movie. I just watched it. The cinematography is gorgeous. I love the color palette of this movie. It looks very natural, very wooden-esque colors, like very brown, but in that beautiful sort of earthy feel. I really love this movie. I can't praise it enough. So let's leave it there. Number 1, The Twilight Samurai. This was a fantastic movie. Let's actually look at my list now. So number 2, this is a movie I watched last night. This is called Enough Said from 2014. It's directed by a woman. I forgot to look up her name. I forgot to write it down before this, but she's great. I believe she also wrote the script for this as well. The characters are very natural. The movie actually reminded me a lot of Marriage Story from, I believe it was last year or the year before Marriage Story came out with Scarlett Johansson, Adam Driver. That was a very excellent movie, and Enough Said is similar boat to that. Very excellent movie, and it's very lenient on the chemistry between these 2 actors. The lead actress here is Julie Louis-Dreyfus. She's great. We all know her as Elaine from Seinfeld. She's terrific here. The standout, of course, the reason why I wanted to watch this film is James Gandolfini. God rest his soul. He, man, after watching this film, and I got another film to talk about after this, but it just breaks my heart the fact that this wonderful man isn't still with us today. What an actor! After watching how brilliant he was in this movie, and like how natural, how charismatic he is. It's I miss the guy so much, and of course, like Twilight Samurai, this movie had me crying by the end as well, and maybe it was just maybe it was just due to the fact that you know, just miss this actor, man. He's so great. And yeah, I don't got much to say about this movie other than the fact that I like I like the Twilight Samurai. This film has no real villain in it. You know, Catherine Keener's in this. She's, I guess, a villain, if you will, but not in your typical sense. She's a human being. She has her problems with, well, I won't spoil. There's a little twist partway through that I'm surprised I didn't see, but I reckon that a lot of people probably could see the sort of twist that they got going on coming from a mile away. Other than that, this movie was fantastic. It's all about these characters and their relationship with one another, falling in love at the middle age of your life. It's a beautiful thing. This movie was very well acted, extremely well acted, well written, well directed. I mean, everything about this movie I just thought was brilliant. It's more of a drama, romance than it is a comedy, but it's definitely very funny. It had me cracking up quite a bit throughout. I looked it up on Rotten Tomatoes, and the first negative review from the top critic was, I think, from the Financial Times, and it said it's too depressing. And I'm like, too depressing? No, it wasn't. Like, this has some levity to it. I don't know how you could find a movie like this to be depressing, in all honesty. Like, clearly he hasn't watched some more deeply depressing stuff in his past. You know, especially working for Financial Times, you'd think you'd know the difference between depressing and uplifting. This was an uplifting, beautiful movie in my opinion, and I'd highly recommend it to everybody. And I was surprised it's PG-13, so you know, it felt like it would be an R-rated movie, but it wasn't, so that was a shock to me. But this is definitely a very adult-centric movie, obviously, so that PG-13 rating kind of shocked me. But again, it sort of goes to show you that there's no like explicit sex in this movie or what have you, not too much foul language or whatnot. So terrific stuff here. Enough said about that. Number 3, Only the Lonely, 1991. John Candy in this, man. So John Candy's, what is his name? Danny. He's the overprotective son of this shrewd woman named Rose. Overbearing mother, played brilliantly by Maureen O'Hara. Candy's dandy, but liquor's thicker. Falls in love with Ali Sheedy from Breakfast Club, and Macaulay Culkin's here for good measure. Yeah, you can totally see me reading off the screen here. I actually wrote a bit for this. It's written by Chris Columbus, the man who delivered the first 2 Home Alone and Harry Potter movies. And yeah, like enough said before it, this is one of the best romantic comedies I've ever seen. John Candy, by God, this is a great role, possibly his best role ever in my opinion. He's at his finest, arguably, in this film. He's so charming, so likable from the very beginning, so lovable. And even the mother has a nice romance going on with the neighbor. I believe his name is Nick. I forget the actor's name, but he's brilliant in the film, along with the entire cast. I like the man that plays Candy's brother in this. I forget that actor, but he's very popular. You've probably seen him in a bunch of movies. Very good character actor. And yeah, I don't have too much to say about this other than the fact that I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's brilliant. I think it's a beautiful, just charming movie. And enough said about that one. This is Only the Lonely, 1991. And it's very, very charming watching it now with how lonely we all must be, sitting inside waiting for whatever to pass over. So yeah, this was a very fun movie to watch. This next movie, number 4, It's from 1980. It's called Used Cars. I think I'd seen this movie once before, but I didn't remember too much about it, though certain scenes stuck in my head. Basically, I got written down here, Jack Warden's evil twin gets his brother killed in order to gain control of his used car lot, though Kurt Russell makes a promise to good Warden. Man, I'm trying to be so crafty with writing this crap. To keep the property, and later discovers the daughter, played by Deborah Harmon. Excellent dark comedy with a phenomenal cast, including Frank McRae, Joe Flaherty, and Michael McKean, who's Saul's brother, or Jimmy's brother from Better Call Saul. Terrific actor. He's great in this. He's got a little bit part in this. And it all leads to a well-choreographed vehicular run during the climax, and a cute dog that does some funny tricks throughout. Written and directed by Robert Zemeckis, so you really can't go wrong. Much like the Beatles movie I just watched, that was directed by him. What was that called? I Want to Hold Your Hand. That was a terrific comedy, I felt, and this one's no exception. Brilliant comedy, especially that chase at the end. I don't think this is quite as good as I Want to Hold Your Hand, let alone Back to the Future and other classic Zemeckis movies. However, this is definitely a fantastic dark comedy. I was surprised at how dark it was, especially in the scene. Like, I wasn't going to talk about it, but they basically spoil it for the synopsis I noticed on IMDb for it. So, and it happens within the first 10 minutes or so. One of the darkest scenes I've ever seen from a comedy, in which this mechanic guy takes the good Jack Warden brother, and he basically, like, his evil twin brother knows that he has a heart problem, so he's like, hey, like, take him for a joyride, and, like, it's this really intense, almost horrifying scene. Like, it feels like something out of a horror movie. And maybe that's part in where my problem with this movie lies. Like, of all the movies on here, I'd say it's my least favorite, but I'd still highly recommend this movie either way. My biggest problem with it, though, is that there's no real vengeance inflicted upon this guy who, clearly commits this wrongdoing to this good guy. Like, he gets punched at the end and falls off, and that's it. And it's like, I was hoping to see him get, like, his head smushed by a car, like something out of a Mad Max movie I was hoping for. Because this ending very much reminded me of, like, a Mad Max type movie. And the stunts in it are pretty great. Like, Kurt Russell is literally walking on, like, atop of vehicles by the end of the movie, and the vehicles are going at a pretty decent pace. Like, so it's I'd be curious to know how this movie was insured or whatnot, but yeah, very, very well done in the stunt department. Like, they got a lot of great vehicle scenes. I was very surprised by that. And it's a very funny movie with a riveting performance from Kurt Russell at the heart of it. I mean, riveting in the sense that he's extremely hilarious in this, in my opinion. He's absolutely terrific here. Not quite up there, in my opinion, with his other comedic roles, like especially Jack Burton from Big Trouble in Little China. I just love that comedic performance from Kurt Russell in that movie. However, this movie's probably top 5 of Kurt Russell's performances throughout his illustrious career. And great Zemeckis movie. So number 5, moving on here, we got Night Shift from 1982. Henry Winkler is partnered up with Michael Keaton to run a city morgue at night, only they decide to use it as a front for prostitution in order to aid the women who are being subjugated to abuse and loss of funds after their pimp is murdered. Hilarious hijinks ensue, and this is a classic comedic duo. Keaton and Winkler are incredible throughout. Ron Howard directs this film brilliantly. Couldn't have said it better myself if I had written it down, and surely enough, I did write it down. This is a great movie. Michael Keaton is just brilliant in this film, and Henry Winkler has a nice romantic subplot with one of the prostitutes. I forget the actress's name or the character's name at that, but it's this very charming romance that they got between one another. And yeah, like this movie reminded me of that terrible Martin Scorsese movie called After Hours, in that, you know, this movie isn't too similar to that in terms of storyline or what have you, but it's very similar in the sense that it's sort of this dark comedy. Like, it starts off with like this murder, like they throw this pimp out of a building, but it's done in this comedic sort of way. And it just reminded me of what I wanted from that Scorsese After Hours movie. I hated the protagonist of that movie. I thought the side characters were way more interesting, and this movie almost felt like it was fulfilling my wish from that Scorsese movie. I can't get over how upset I was by that Scorsese film, because somebody here on YouTube said it was their favorite Scorsese film, and I'm like, oh, I was very excited about that, because I'm like, oh, I hadn't seen it before. And I watch it, and Cheech and Chong pop up in it from time to time. They're on screen for like 5 minutes or so. They steal the show, obviously. They're great. And it has some funny moments in After Hours, but it was just such a disappointment, especially with the main character having a damn unibrow that you can't help but notice. See, I don't got no unibrow, thankfully, between my eyebrows up there. But yeah, Night Shift, this was a fantastic movie. Charming, oddball comedy. Michael Keaton is so funny in this. Henry Winkler, it's great to see him in a lead role and not doing his like Fonzie or whatever shtick from Happy Days. He's just very much the straight man to Michael Keaton's like lunacy, if you will. Yeah. So that's about it with that one. Yeah, Night Shift. Great movie. So, number 6. Quite possibly my favorite movie on this list here. Number 6, Jimmy Hollywood, 1994. Joe Pesci gives one of his best performances ever as Jimmy Alto, a guy who is obsessed with celebrity so much that he ends up becoming the head of a terrorist group known as the SOS, which combats crime on the streets of LA, surprisingly relevant to a modern landscape. This is an incredibly underrated movie with compelling characters and a climax that builds a surprising level of intensity. This feels like what John Travolta's The Fanatic was trying and failed to be, as Jimmy Hollywood has more in line with a classic like The King of Comedy than anything else. Absolutely blown away by this movie. Again, couldn't have said it better myself. And I wrote it down. What a moron I am. Repeat the same gag twice. Oh, geez, I'm so redundant. Jimmy Hollywood, 1994, man. This is a great movie. Christian Slater's also in this, and there's a hilarious big name Hollywood cameo by the end of this movie that sort of plays out during the end credits that I will not spoil, because I actually had it spoiled for me, unfortunately. So I was like going through the whole movie like, when's he going to show up? When's he going to show up? And surely they saved the best for last. And I genuinely love this movie. This one of those movies that totally took me off guard. It has somewhere like between a 20-30% rating on Rotten Tomatoes, both from the critics and the audiences. I think maybe the audience rating is a bit higher, maybe in the 30s or something like that. IMDb has it as a 5.3 out of 10, and God, man, this is one of those movies. It kind of pisses me off how many people just gave this bad reviews, because if you look at the written reviews on IMDb, it's the polar opposite. Like every written review that I saw, 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 1 or 2 that were 10 out of 10, 7 out of 10, you know, and at the very bottom, the least helpful ones were like 1 out of 10 and just ridiculous scores like that. So that goes to show you how ridiculous the reception to this movie was back in the 90s and even to this day. So I hope to bring some new eyes to this film with recommending it to you guys, because I was so shocked at how good this movie was. This movie built up such an intensity by the end, and I was so worried for Joe Pesci's character, because he is not a very smart guy, but he's likable because he's doing this for a good thing, but at the same time, throughout the back of your head, you're too obsessed with this celebrity thing. But the brilliance of this movie comes in like the shots where Joe Pesci isn't talking, like it's the camera just lingers on him, especially when he's watching TV and you see how fixated he is on this stuff. It's almost like the Cable Guy in that aspect, where like the best parts of that movie were when like Jim Carrey was just locked onto the screen and you could just like read his character from just him watching television, like this like junkie, this obsessed person who just can't get enough of it. And God, I just like by the end of the movie, and especially I forgot to write down her name, but Joe Pesci has this love interest in the movie, and she's terrific in it, and their chemistry is golden throughout. And you're on her side. You're just pleading, hoping that Joe Pesci's character makes it out of this ridiculous scenario alive, because he's taking it so far to the point where, you know, it could damn well get him killed by the end. And that whole, like, her pleading with him by the end had me, like, just crying my damn eyes out. I don't think I've ever cried during a Joe Pesci film, so this broke that for me. I'd say this is definitely up there with his best, from Goodfellas to My Cousin Vinny. This deserves more recognition. It genuinely pisses me off, the reception that this film has gotten. I think this film is much better than it's been outed as being, and quite frankly, I think the people that rate this like a 1 out of 10 or something ridiculous like that are totally out to lunch, and maybe they need to stop watching movies altogether, because quite frankly, I think their opinions are ridiculous when it comes to their thoughts towards this film being anywhere near as awful as they claim it to be. I think this is a underrated, underappreciated, overlooked classic that deserves to be seen. And much like one of the earlier films, much like Used Cars, I thought I had seen this movie before as a kid, because I remembered the scene during the climax near the ending. It takes place in this sort of like theater setting, and I remembered something like that as a kid, but I don't think I watched the beginning of it. So like right when the ending of this film happened, it all like washed over me like, hey, I'd seen this before, but I just obviously didn't know what the hell it was as a kid. So watching it now, maybe it has that nostalgia effect on its side, but watching it now, it's just completely blew my mind as to how amazed I was by this film. Enough said. Number 7, Nightbreed, 1990. From the mind of Hellraiser creator Clive Barker, this is an adaptation of his own novel called Cabal, and it is a supremely entertaining movie with a deliciously villainous performance from David Cronenberg as Dr. Philip K. Decker. Awesome practical monster effects throughout. This was a horrifying joy to watch, and it brought to mind a cross between Hellraiser, Spawn, Hellboy, X-Men, Little Monsters, Halloween, you name it. It's a very unique film. Definitely seek out the director's cut for this one. I was active in making sure I was watching the damn director's cut, because I didn't want to watch the botched studio version where it's terribly edited. Apparently, from what I've gathered, terribly edited. And so I don't know the difference between the theatrical cut and this one. And quite frankly, I don't ever care to find out because I really enjoyed this movie a lot, this director's cut. Very unique film, very like the mythos behind it, the lore that they allude to and provide exposition for. Like it's brilliant. Like it makes me want to see this get rebooted. I don't think this is a classic movie in the common sense. I think this is a brilliant movie, brilliantly underrated movie, just like Jimmy Hollywood before it. But this film definitely has a cult following to it. I hear a lot more people talking about this than something like Jimmy Hollywood. So at least it's got that going for it. And I could see them one day rebooting this. And I would hope they make like a television series. I think Clive Barker was talking about it, but it's all just talking now. I hope it comes to light soon enough, because this is a wonderful premise, especially for a series. He planned on making this a trilogy, so that's why this film sort of ends. Like, and that's the biggest problem with this film. It sort of lends itself into like clearly anticipating a sequel to happen in the future, or like two sequels at that. But you know, obviously this wasn't a hit at the box office, and it was a critical commercial dud, so studio was having none of it. So hopefully they do remake this, reboot it as like a television series or something. I think that could be absolutely brilliant if they did that. I'm not sure who the hell they'd get behind it, but whoever's capable of having this same level of creative creature designs as Clive Barker and the VFX team behind this wonderful movie. I thought this was a brilliant movie in spite of my problems with it. I was watching it with a friend actually, and he left about a bit more than halfway through. So right after like the second act or so, he decided to leave because he was just he was falling asleep during this movie. And we watched another movie before this, so I'll get to that in a second. But he apparently hated it. He hasn't seen it all though, mind you, yet. But you know, I don't think his opinion's going to change much on this film, quite frankly. Though I'm happy I sat through the rest of it. I'm happy I didn't give up on it. I was intrigued from the get-go, especially with David Cronenberg as the villain. I cannot stress enough how much I love him in this role, especially the mask he has and the way he like sticks his finger in his mouth to pull it off. It's so creepy and yet so cool at the same time. It's like, like I love him in this movie. And I almost wish they did have sequels. I almost wish they did have... Actually, I do wish they had a trilogy following this Nightbreed movie. I think it would have been great, but, you know, time will tell if Hollywood's smart enough to reboot this and make it a television series, or maybe just go full tilt, make it a trilogy like you originally planned, because I think it'd go over much better with today's audiences than it did back in like the 90s or whatnot. So either way, check out the director's cut of this movie. I think you'll love it a lot. Number 8, we got A Simple Plan from 1998. This is a Sam Raimi directed movie. Bill Paxton, Billy Bob Thornton are in it as well. I forget the other actress's name. Danny Elfman does the score, of course. And he... cool connection with Nightbreed. He did the score for that as well. So that was kind of a cool connection that me and my buddy found in watching Nightbreed right after A Simple Plan. So this movie, immediately within the first 5 to 10 minutes, I leaned over and told my buddy, this is strikingly similar to Fargo. Like, this feels like it happens like a town or two over from whatever setting Fargo took place in. I don't think this is quite as good as Fargo. Like, quite frankly, I like, me and my buddy had a 15-20 minute long conversation by the end of this just about the ending and what you would do in Bill Paxton's shoes. And that is probably my only problem with this film. I thought this movie was thrilling, brilliantly acted, well directed, well written. But yeah, that ending though, and the decision made Like it makes sense to me, but at the same time, it's like you, if even I like allude to what happens, I don't know. It's hard to talk about without spoiling this movie, so I guess we'll just leave it there. Either way, I thought this film was brilliant. It's teetering between a 9 and a 10 out of 10 for me. Like either way, I think this film's a classic. It's definitely up there as one of Sam Raimi's best movies. Number 9, getting into more kid-friendly territory here. I think this is the only kid-friendly movie that I got on here. Yes, it is. So number 9, this is a movie I remember as a kid. It's called Mouse Hunt, 1997. What's his name? Nathan Lane's in this. I think the other guy's name is Lee Evans, if I'm not mistaken. I think he's in The Fifth Element. He basically looks like a clone of John Leguizamo, so I always confused the two. And so yeah, this is a 97 movie, came out a year before Simple Plan, and wow. This was directed by Gore Verbinski, the guy who did the 3 Pirates of the Caribbean movies. He did Rango, a bunch of other great stuff. The Western remake of The Ring, which was pretty damn good as well for a remake of a foreign language film. Gore Verbinski, from what I remember, I think this was his first movie. And by God, I gotta tell you, I think this is his best movie by far. The effects in this movie, especially I think it's like the Rube Goldberg effect, they call it, where it's like one thing falls and it's almost this domino effect of things happening that lead to comedic hijinks. And I love everything about this movie. I was shocked, I was stunned. I knew I'd like it, at least based off of my memory of it as a kid, but I didn't know I'd love it as much as I did here. This was such a fantastic, brilliant comedy through and through, with 2 marvelous performances at the heart of it. Like one of the best comedic duos in comedy history, in my opinion. The 2 brothers in this are brilliantly funny, brilliantly cast, well written, just extremely likable, even though they are so ridiculously naive and stupid at certain points. But and a marvelous cameo too from Christopher Walken about halfway through the movie. He plays this rat exterminator guy, and it leads to a funny scene of just just the way they destroy this house slowly but surely throughout the course of this movie it's that in of itself is worth seeing. But there's this one scene in particular that I really loved. It starts off so charming. It's one of the cutest scenes I've ever seen in a movie. It's basically this mouse like crawling around in the wall, and like the cute little mouse basically tucks himself in to the blanket. I don't know if it's a visual effect or not. Like, did they train a real mouse to do this? Like, it's incredible, and it's such a cute scene. And then all of a sudden, bam! Like this nail pierces the wall, and it turns from the most charming, cute scene you've ever seen to this horrifying, like fight for this mouse's life, you know? Like, he's running and all these nails are coming in, and it's just like, it's one of the most intense scenes I've ever seen, not only from a kid's movie, but ever, because it starts at the opposite end of the spectrum, absolutely wholeheartedly charming, and then it ends up being like just totally unexpectedly terrifying, and you're in the shoes of this mouse. And the cinematography, I can't stress enough. Bon appetit, man. Brilliant cinematography. This movie was most definitely the inspiration behind Ratatouille. If they told me otherwise, I'd say, screw you, you're lying to me, especially by the end of this movie. I was just like, okay, so there's no need to do a live-action remake of Ratatouille, Disney. We've already basically got it with Mouse Hunt. This was a fantastic movie through and through. I loved this movie. Maybe if it wasn't for Jimmy Hollywood, maybe I would have said that this is my favorite movie on this list. But for now, like looking at all these movies again, I'd say it's probably number 2, with the Twilight Samurai coming in probably at number 3. And yeah, I'm not sure how I'd rate the rest in order of like how I feel about them from there. Moving on to the final movie now. Number 10, Find Me Guilty. This is a 2006 movie. Now, I forget who directed this film. It's either David Mamet or Sidney Lumet. Or Sidney Lumet? I'm pretty sure it's Sidney Lumet. I'm pretty sure. He directed the Devil... Before the Devil Knows You're Dead or something like that. It's got Ethan Hawke, Philip Seymour Hoffman, Marissa Tomei's in that movie. That's a terrific movie as well. I'd highly recommend that one. Find Me Guilty, though. Vin Diesel. Magnificent performance. Best performance of his career by a wide margin. He is outstanding in this movie. Peter Dinklage plays this lawyer for these mob guys. Basically, Vin Diesel takes it upon himself to represent himself. Meanwhile, these other guys like have their lawyers doing their thing. And the courtroom scenes in this, I mentioned My Cousin Vinny earlier, but this very much reminded me of something like My Cousin Vinny, in that every time there's a court scene in this, it's so entertainingly fun, especially when Vin Diesel gets to stand up and make his plea to the jury. Peter Dinklage is in this as well, and he's absolutely terrific here. I kept getting flashbacks to season 3 of Game of Thrones when he's on trial as Tyrion, and I kept flashing back to that in my head because he almost has like a similar plea to the jury in this. He's obviously not trying to defend his own life, but yeah, I thought Peter Dinklage was great. The whole cast, quite frankly, absolutely brilliant, and I love this movie through and through. And yeah, that's about it, you guys. So I'll talk about a few honorable mentions here, because in Audrey, beautiful cat. That's it. While I'm talking about these honorable mentions, you get over here, you beauty. So honorable mention number 1 is called My Blue Heaven. It's from the 90s at some point, but the reason why I wanted to watch this, not only because it's a Steve Martin movie, but it's also got Rick Moranis in it, and I love Rick Moranis. He's one of my favorite comedic actors of all time. I heard a rumor, I'm not sure if it's true, but I'm pretty sure it is, that they're making a third, or just another Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie. I forget if they already made a third one or what. I think I watched the sequel, where they blow up the baby. I can't remember if they did another one after that. But apparently they're making another Honey, I Shrunk the Kids movie, and apparently Rick Moranis is coming back. So it gives me hope that Rick Moranis will be in this new Ghostbusters movie. I'm crossing my fingers, hoping to God he is in that Ghostbusters movie. I think he will be, though, because they've all but confirmed everybody else is coming back. I hope Sigourney Weaver's coming back. I presume the 3 Ghostbusters that are alive, Ernie Hudson, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, I'm pretty sure they've already locked themselves in and they're coming back full throttle. So my Blue Heaven. So I saw this article about it recently. I forget who it was from, but they basically said this is the movie that happens after Goodfellas. So basically, this is the follow-up to Goodfellas, unofficially, of course. It's not about Henry Hill, Henry Hill. I was about to call him Hank Hill, but that's King of the Hill. So yeah, this movie very much takes place after the events of Goodfellas in that sense. It's about this guy going on house arrest for being involved with the mob and stuff like that. And he's got a wife, of course, but she ditches him immediately. As soon as Rick Moranis' FBI agent closes the door, she's basically packing her bags and gone out of there. And yeah, this was a movie. I'm happy I watched this too, because recently they announced Will Smith and Kevin Hart, I guess, are doing a remake of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Like, oh, God. Arguably the best John Hughes movie, my personal favorite John Hughes movie. One of the best comedies of all time. Of course, Hollywood wants to remake it. It was made in 1987. Of course, they want to remake it. And it's only after watching a movie like My Blue Heaven, I think this came out right in 1990, so a few years after Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, when Steve Martin was in the prime of his career. Why the hell they don't remake a movie like this instead of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is beyond me, because my biggest damn problem with this movie is the fact that it's PG-13. PG-13. They said the F word once in this, Steve Martin does. And I'm like, this is an R-rated movie. But no, like, because it's so noticeable by the time, like, you get to the other mob characters, because they're all sitting at this dinner table. They're all blabbering to one another. And instead of saying the F word, they say fart, they say friggin'. And it's so distracting. It's like, why are these mob guys censoring themselves? It makes no sense in the context of this world, this movie, their characters, etc. It's ridiculous. Why the hell was this PG-13? I swear this was originally an R-rated movie. It definitely has that feel. It's not violent, but it has that feel that the studio cut it down, like cut out the profanity last minute because it didn't have much of it. Like, because very much when these mob guys say stuff like fart and friggin' instead of the F word, it's very distracting, and it almost seems like it's ADR'd later in the post-production process of the film. Very distracting. I very much wanted to love this movie because I loved Steve Martin and Rick Moranis, especially Rick Moranis in this movie. He stole the show for me. Steve Martin was kind of, like, the Italian accent was kind of forced, and obviously he's not Italian, so I found that distracting. I kind of wish they had a guy like Ray Liotta in the lead role here, and that's why I would really love to see this movie get remade instead of damn Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. You guys are ridiculous remaking that instead of this. Like, My Blue Heaven deserves a remake. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles does not need a remake, Hollywood. And I think we all know that because the backlash was unanimous against a remake of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. They don't even have a bloody script for this damn movie. They don't even have a script, and yet they announce it with these two morons, these overpaid hack actors, comedians. Give me a break, man. Oh, God. I don't mind Will Smith and Kevin Hart. Don't mind them. But they are on autopilot with doing these crap film roles, especially Kevin Hart, man. I'll give Will Smith credit. At least he tries. But Kevin Hart is just like, stick with comedy, man. Because your movies, for the most part, just suck. Like, from Jumanji and all this, like, the remake of The Untouchables that he did with Bryan Cranston. Just abysmal movies this guy does. So I was very upset with the announcement that these two are attached to Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, the remake. Because we already got a similar style movie in Due Date with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis. Except that wasn't called Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. It was called Due Date. And it was an okay movie. It was good. It was entertaining. It was fun. Like, it's not memorable. Like, the one scene I remember laughing hard at in the movie was when, like, Robert Downey Jr. is basically assaulting this kid. Like, I think he, like, punches him in the face or something like that. And that's, like, the one scene I remember from that movie. But anyhow, My Blue Heaven, I still like this movie a lot. I'd probably give it, like, a 8 out of 10 or something like that. Definitely, even though I had a problem with Steve Martin playing this Italian guy, I didn't buy his accent. His accent was distracting throughout the whole damn movie. But he acts his ass off when it counts. Like, there's this courtroom scene, very, very much kind of reminded me of Find Me Guilty, which I think I watched, like, previously to this. But Steve Martin does well with this character when it counts. So kudos to him for overcoming that ridiculous accent that he's got going on. And there's also this marvelous dance sequence in this movie. that just had me smiling from ear to ear. I just loved it. I loved the chemistry between these two actors, and I thought this movie could have been a classic in my opinion if it was just R-rated. But it wasn't, so it was distracting when it felt like it should have not been. You know, like I hate it when movies take me out like that, when they should be R-rated, but instead they're trying to be PG-13. Because this movie doesn't appeal to kids. This movie appeals to fans of Goodfellas, not whatever. I don't know what the hell the studio was thinking with making this PG-13, or maybe it was the writers or the director. I don't know, but whoever made that mistake, shame on them, because they ruined what could have been a classic movie, in my opinion. And, okay, finally, one last honorable mention, then I'm going to get out of your hair. I'm trying so hard for comedic effect, to be funny, All I want is for people to laugh at me, laugh along with me. Hey! So final movie, speaking of laughter, I'm actually kind of pissed thinking about it now that I didn't include it on here. So, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to look it up here. Brain Donors. Brain Donors from 1992. I just had to look this up, man, because after seeing this is one of my favorite comedies of all time. Like, not even kidding. Probably top 5 comedies that I've ever seen. How the hell I didn't include it on this list of movies is sacrilegious, in my opinion. It's totally boggles my mind how I didn't include it on this list here. I absolutely wholeheartedly loved this movie. It's basically, they basically describe it here as a tribute to the Marx Brothers' antics. It's about this comedic trio, this lawyer, cab driver, and handyman. They team up to run a ballet company to fulfill the will of a millionaire. And the plot is as simple as that. It's mainly about the hijinks that these characters get into. And this movie just blew my damn mind in how brilliant it was. There's this gag in here. I'll try not to spoil it too much, but it involves this guy basically pulling out of his jacket this desk. And it goes on for about 2, maybe 3 minutes. And it's honestly one of the most mind-bogglingly amazing things I've ever seen in a movie ever. Like, it blew my mind, this scene, because, like, it's, oh god, it makes my brain want to explode, the level of creativity and genius on display with this movie. John Turturro, man, he's so brilliant in this, and they have this villain in this film who is so despicable. You just hate him, and what I love is that they know right when to have these characters jump in the middle of his villainy. Like, because he's a creep, like a sexual creep, like he's trying to like get in the pants of this woman who's already in this relationship with this sweet like dancer guy. And also there's this brilliant dance sequence in this movie as well. So man, I just loved this movie. And you know what, I'll say it here, like of the 10 films I mentioned, now I guess it's 12. So we're making this a 12 movie, and we'll probably do one more since this is 10 movies 3. But yeah, like this movie just blows my mind and how much I loved it. From the claymation opening and closing credits to the marvelous, absolutely brilliant 3 performances at the heart of this movie. I absolutely adore this movie. Like I said, it's one of my top 5 favorite comedies of all time. If not my favorite comedy of all time, I'm willing to go that far with it. I was stunned at how amazing this movie was. And I'm looking at IMDb here. It's got a 7.1 out of 10 with just under 4,000 votes. Like, this movie deserves way more than that. I think if this movie got the right audience, got the right amount of attention, this movie would be like an 8 out of 10 at least on IMDb. I think this movie, I would be shocked if anybody wasn't thoroughly impressed by this movie. Like it blows my mind the people that don't see the genius here in this movie. It really does. And this is directed by Dennis Dugan, who made like a bunch of abysmal Adam Sandler comedies. Like I often associate him with like the worst of Adam Sandler's comedies. Like I forget which ones that he did, but let's take a quick peek at him now, I guess. So yeah, Brain Donors, 1992. I'd highly recommend this movie. Mainly not for anything. I mean, mainly for the whole damn movie. If it's the one scene I had to choose that's my favorite, it's definitely the scene that I sort of described. I don't want to describe it in detail because when it happens, it's just so out of nowhere and so brilliant. I just love it, man. I just love it. Wow, my internet is slow. It's finally loading the page here. It's all white screen for me, making me blind. But yeah, what's another movie? Okay, I already know the other movie I'll talk about here. And then we'll be done with this because I'll be done with this other movie in a heartbeat because... or maybe I should do this... Yeah, I'll do this one movie that I hated because I got a thing or two to say about this god-awful movie that I saw recently. So let's get to that after this thing loads here. So yeah, Dennis Dugan basically directed a bunch of like terrible Adam Sandler comedies, what have you. And yeah. Man, this is still not loading. Oh my god, my computer's the worst. If not, it's the internet. It's probably the computer, though. This computer's so broken, so ancient. Like, I remember a few months back, I had a buddy of mine over, and he was looking at my computer to see why it's running so slow, and he literally just went like that, cringing, and just went like, oh, yeah, there's no helping it. It's like, yeah, I know. It's time for an upgrade at some point. I don't know when. But yeah, this ain't loading, so screw Dennis Dugan. Oh, of course, as soon as I exited it, it had his face popping up, smiling at me. Ah! But hey, I appreciate the man now. I mean, he probably made at least something good from Adam Sandler's wheelhouse. What it was, I'll never know, but final movie? Alright, now it's loaded. Okay, so he directed... Oh wait, did he direct Happy Gilmore? Because he's an actor too, so let's see. Grown Ups 2, Jack and Jill. Grown Ups 1, You Don't Mess with the Zohan, which is probably the worst Adam Sandler movie I've ever seen. That movie's abysmal. National Security, I didn't mind that movie, but the soundtrack for it is just obnoxious. Saving Silverman, Big Daddy, Beverly Hills Ninja, pretty funny Chris Farley movie. I actually like that movie. Happy Gilmore, and Problem Child before this. Oh, okay. So I guess Problem Child was his first big movie, and then he followed it up with Brain Donors. So yeah, his two best movies were basically at the start of his career. Though I do like Happy Gilmore as well. He directed that. Yeah, I do like Happy Gilmore as well. And is there anything else? No, it's all crap from there. So, final movie. Let me look this crap up because I want to mention these morons by name. Exorcism at 60,000 feet. Okay, there it is. Spoiler, Exorcism at 60,000 feet from 2019 is the worst movie I've ever seen. That's it. That's it. What more do you want me to say? This has a 4.1 out of 10 on IMDb. No, this doesn't even deserve a 1 out of 10. This is one of the most pathetic movies. And this movie won awards? Are you kidding me? Let's look to see which... So I'll give it credit where it's due. I really liked the poster to this movie. It's a throwback to those like 70s style posters. Like, and you hear right away that this is going to be like a comedy horror movie, and I was thinking, oh, so it's going to be a cross between The Exorcist and Airplane, right? Wrong. This is honestly one of the most abysmal movies I've ever seen. So this won a bunch of awards at the Hollywood Horror Fest. I've never heard of that before. It's the winner of Best Horror Comedy Feature, Best Actor, Best Comedy Actress, Best Original Score, and it got nominated for Best Feature and Best Sound. Well, based off of how abysmal this movie is, I would not like to see the list of those other movies. In fact, if I were to look at the list of the other movies involved, I'm pretty sure they'd all be way better than this trash was. One of the worst movies I've ever seen, if not the all-time worst movie I've ever seen. Yeah, just outright abysmal. I didn't laugh once. Painful movie. It actually made me hate these actors because, like, the main reason why I wanted to watch this was because it had both Lance Hendrickson in it and it had Kevin J. O'Connor. And I like both those actors. Like, both those actors usually never disappoint me. But in this movie, they are so thoroughly unlikable as these plane pilots. I mean, I couldn't stand any of the characters in this movie, and I just couldn't stand this movie in general. I just thought it was obnoxious. It felt like one of those terrible parody movies that those idiot brothers do, like those spoof movies, like Disaster Movie and Garbage, Epic Movie, garbage like that. It reminded me very much of that. And I was really not I had a feeling this movie was going to be bad based off the ratings for it, but I didn't think it'd be this abysmal. This, like, painfully, teeth-grindingly, nails on the chalkboard type, just painful, man. This movie made me want to just die. Just die. Quite frankly, I want this movie to die, and it's a shame that I'm talking about this movie to end this list on. What a way to go out, eh? Talk about the worst movie of all time after talking about, like, 12 of the best movies of all time, in my opinion, at least. But anyhow, that's it. Again, what a whimper of a way to end this on with the abysmal gunk known as Exorcism at 60,000 Feet from 2019. Please do yourself a favor. Don't watch this unless you're willing to torture yourself for an hour and a half. God knows how long this movie is. It felt like double, if not triple. Yeah, hour 35 minutes that I'll never get back. Yeah, don't bother. Forget about it. Anyhow, that's it. This is probably an hour long, 2 hours, 3 hours. God knows how long I run my mouth for with all these movies. But hey, it's been a while, and I'm happy to talk with you guys about them. And I hope you check out some of these. Of all the movies, I hope you do not check out Exorcism at 60,000 Feet. Go watch Money Plane instead. At least that'll be something. Anyhow, you guys, take care, and I'll see you on the next round.